In this video, we are going to continue the work we were doing in the last lesson. We are going to create the calendar table associated with the other tables in our data model and create a timeline so we can analyze our data according to any time frame we want. So to create the calendar table, I'm going to click the table view and I will start a new table, and I'm going to call this calculated table. It's going to be a calculated table, not an imported table. I'm going to create this table based on information we already have using a DAX function in Power BI. If you look back in Power Query, you won't see the calendar table in Power Query. Well, actually, you could create it in Power Query too, but in this case, I chose to do it in Power BI using a DAX function. And in this case, as it is being created in Power BI, so you won't be able to see it in Power Query, right? It's not in Power Query, only in Power BI. I'm going to call it calendar, and I'm going to use this DAX function. It's calendar function. So the calendar function will create dates, all the dates, every date in a certain interval. So I have to provide as arguments for this function, I have to provide two arguments, which are the starting date and the end date. So the function will automatically create a table with every single date in between. And the start date, it has to be dynamic because I don't even know what dates are in the F sales table. Okay, the F sales table, let me just copy this and I will leave the formula bar for a moment and let me check the F sales table. You see, well, actually, we have a little issue here. We have an important issue here, right? Because remember, when we checked the data that we needed, the tables and the columns that we needed to import in Power Query, I said that eventually we could be missing something that we would have to correct later. And this is an opportunity for us to practice this kind of problem solving. In the F sales, I forgot to import the date column. So there's no way I could create a calendar at this point because at this point, I don't have any date column here. It's a problem. Let's correct it. Let's go back to Management Studio. And in the fact sales table, let me work this time with the top five rows, and I'm going to comment this second row because I want to see every column in my fact table. And look, I have a date key. This is going to be the date. So I have to import. Let me see if I have another date column. Well, this is the column, so I forgot to import this date key. Let me remove this asterisk date key column. Let me run it again. Okay, now I have the date key. So I'm going to add this column to the query in Power Query. Okay, let me go back to the report view and transform data. So the Power Query editor will open up, and I'm going to change this table, F sales table. So I have to go to the source step and clicking the little icon here, I didn't show this in previous lessons. In previous lessons, we adjusted the SQL script right here in the formula bar, but also I forgot to show you that we can also do it clicking the little icon, the gear icon, and then you can do it from here. And actually what I had to do here, I only had to add the additional column I need, which is date key. Now I will click OK. And there you go. I'm just going to change it into date. I don't want date time. And all right, let's close and apply. The changes are going to be loaded. And on the table view, now I have a date column. There you go. Now I'm just going to rename it. I'm going to double click and rename it just as date. Okay, date. Now I can create. Let me click table tools, and a new table. Now I'm going to create a new calculated table. But again, look, let me go back real quick. And I have lots of dates. And this table has 3 million and pretty much 3.5 million rows. Look, 3.4 million rows. And I don't know what date is the first date and the last date. It doesn't matter. I will just click Table Tools and create a new table, new calculated table that I'm going to call the calendar. And I'm going to use the calendar function in Power and DAX. And I need the start date. The start date is going to be the minimum date in the date column. Okay, and I want the minimum date from the F sales table and date column. Okay, now I am starting from the minimum date, which is actually the oldest date from the date column from the F sales table. And also I need the maximum date from the same F sales table in the date column. So what I'm doing here, I'm telling Power BI, hey, create a calendar from this initial date to this final date. The initial date is going to be the oldest or the minimum date from the date column in the F sales table. And the maximum date, which would be the closest date, is going to be it's going to come from the date column in the F sales table. And press enter, and there you go. Now you have all the dates in between. And in the model view, I'm going to use it as it's a D calendar, which means it's a dimension table. And now I'm going to create a relationship between this date and the date in the F sales. Okay, date and date. And the format is different. The date format is different. It doesn't matter. It's only the format, but the content is the same. Save. There you go. Now I can, back to the report view, I can create a slicer. And in the slicer, I can use the date column. But before we do that, I'm going to click the D calendar table, right click, and mark as a data table. Mark as a date table, actually. So mark it as a date table. Mark as a date table. And what column is going to be the date? Well, actually, I only have one. So this is the only one I'm going to use. And save. There you go. You can see that this little icon changed, which means this is supposed to be the date for my project. And now this is the one I'm going to bring into the slicer, the date slicer, and only let's format it differently. In slicer settings, I will choose, I want dates between intervals. Well, it's right. It's just not showing the slider button. It is right now. And size and style, let's uncheck background. I want it to be transparent, and values, the values should be white, and the slicer headers should be white too. The slider, and let's make the slider white too. So now I can interact with different date frames, and now I can also use the product slicers, and all the slicers are working just fine. Okay, there you go. And now I'm going to clean up all of the slicers, and we are almost done. The last thing we need to do is just to improve the colors, the style, and formatting everything to make it look better. So we will do this in the next video. See you in the next lesson.